by 200 level, and I was also active in my church in school. I found that this thing that I could do literally for free, people would were willing to pay me. And the pastor of my fellowship in school at the time was also somebody who encouraged all of us to start a business. Whatever you were doing, go and start something, register a
Fantastic.
business, have a business. It was just something very exciting. And so back in 200 level, I had my first business card.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, viewers, depending on where you're watching us from. It's another exciting episode of The Adventures, and my name is Kunle Olufemi, your host. It's my pleasure to have you on this very episode of The Adventures. As you know, on The Adventures, we seek to bring you the stories of courage and vision behind the brands and the organizations that you see and interact with every day. And our hope is that as we bring you their stories and they tell you about their journeys, that you are able to avoid some of their pitfalls or some of their mistakes, and thus you are able to achieve success and significance and impact even faster than they did. And today, we have an exciting guest for you that will be sharing a lot about our stories and about our experiences along this entrepreneurial journey. It's my pleasure to, bring to you the founder and the CEO of Mostron Communications. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but we'll get that fixed as we go on, right? But Mostron Communications essentially is a bespoke public relations consultancy outfit providing services to C-suite executives, business to business, and social impact organizations across sub-Saharan Africa, Europe, and beyond. It's my pleasure to bring to you Mrs. Tolulope Olorundero, also known as Tolucomms. Hi, Tolulope. Good to have you in our studios today.
Thank you so much, Kale. Thank you for the opportunity.
The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine. And again, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Okay, so normally I would want you to start by telling us a little bit about what you do, right? The organizations that you run, right? And in the process of doing that, if you can double click a little bit into the scale of the operations, as you may not know, right? Your customer, your clients may be on my timeline. So let's take this as your unpaid advert, right? On the levels of adventure. So go for it.
All right. Thank you again, Kale, for the opportunity. As you
Yeah,
said, my name is
pleasure.
Tolulope Olorundera. It's very odd to hear somebody introduce me as Mrs. Tolulope, right? But within professional settings, that's honestly very odd. But my name is Tolulope Olorundera. In the industry, some people call me Tolucomms. I
Mhm,
lead a public relations consultancy practice
mm,
operating from Lagos, Nigeria, but we provide services to clients across sub Saharan Africa and some countries in Europe. I also lead a social impact professional organization. We're registered as Public Relations Women Foundation, but we're
mm,
more known publicly as Nigerian Women in Public Relations.
mm,
We're about 6 years old now for Nigerian Women in PR, and our focus is to provide growth resources and provide
mm,
essentially opportunities for visibility for women who are practicing public relations and who
mm,
are of Nigerian descent. Double clicking on the scope in terms of the work that we do at Mosron and the scale of that service. Mosron Communications provides public relations services and strategic communication services to business organizations and to C suite executives who have a certain number of years of experience. Um, and in terms of scale, well, so first of all, this year I started Mosron Communications in 2006. as an undergraduate, I think in the same school that you went. But then I kept it as a side also. Yeah. And I had it registered, by the way. I
Wow.
kept it as a side also until late 2018, when I mean, for many reasons, which I'm sure we may get into, but then I started it full time in 2018. And since then, like I said, it's a fully, by the way, one of the very interesting things about my business is that both organizations are run fully remotely. And so far, I've had team members across at least two continents. There are some team members that I've never met. They've left my employ now and we've never met them. And then sometimes I have people who are team members within Nigeria, and then there's a logistical nightmare. So now we want to have a hangout. How do I transport people from wherever they are to our mainstay here in Lagos? But it's been
Mm,
incredible. Um, and I think in terms of scale, though, landmark in terms of a breakthrough year came actually during COVID. And that was something so interesting that I found, again, which I'm sure that we'll get into. But in terms of scale, so we've provided services to organizations like Landmark Africa, MacArthur Foundation, GIZ, um, one of the biggest bank in Cameroon, Afriland Bank. Um, I mean, quite a number. Each time I'm asked this question, I always forget the names because you don't want to mention one client and then you're leaving the others. But again, please visit my website or our website to
yeah.
see our roll call of clients. But honestly, we've been privileged really to provide services to some of the biggest brands
Mm,
in Nigeria and beyond. And
mm,
it's been very interesting to see that growth, even though it was something that I expected, but to see that opportunity to provide services to these clients, many
mm.
of whom I've actually never met in person. Right.
Wow.
So again, yeah, I mean, it's consultancy, it's services, and very many times there may not be a need to have a physical one-on-one with our clients. And for those that we've met, it's been an incredible journey just engaging them. We've had clients that have been with us for 3 years, 4 years,
Mm,
and just continually providing service. And what it tells us is the quality of service that we provide. First of all, it's not necessarily very common in our climb in the way that we provide that service. And I guess that's why they stay with us.
wow. Wow. Interesting. I mean, just like you pointed us to your site, right? And I'm just having a look at your profile. I can see Job and I can see Outsource
Ah,
Global, I can
thank you.
see
Ah,
Cap, I can see Hotbait, I can see the Ambassador School, I can see Society for Corporate Governance. I mean, don't let me spend
yeah.
all the time reading, but
Listen
it
them out. Thank you.
well, it looks like you have a very busy practice, right? Super busy
Well, we'll
practice,
try.
and that's cool to know. That's cool to know.
Thank you. Thank you.
But as you were introducing, and thanks for sharing all of that, Tulula, I really appreciate that. As you were introducing that, I couldn't help picking up on the fact that you said you started this as a student back in 2006,
Yeah,
right?
I
Can,
did.
can you
I
can
did.
you share a little bit about how all of these kind of evolved? How did it start?
Started. All right. So first, one of the very peculiar things. I'm not sure it's very peculiar. For a young girl, about the same time when I grew up, then you likely read a lot of novels. So I was exposed to books very early. My father
Mm,
was a journalist, so we had lots and lots of books around in the house. Of course,
mm,
eventually, not the kinds of books I eventually started reading, but then there were
yeah.
quite a number of books around. My dad always had books in the house. I read novels for children, Enid Blyton. There was this very popular periodical as well, this short book. I can't remember the name now, but I always had access to books. And I'm the third of four children. I'm very introverted when I'm not at work. I like my space. I like to be by myself. And I love to read novels more than watch films because my imagination is very active, right? So I prefer to, I can I can build all the castles. I can picture the things I read in a book much better than if I were watching it in a film. So that gave me first of all, it introduced me to the world of good writing, right? Because most of the books that we had in the house, They were not necessarily Nigerian authors. Of course, we had newspapers, which is
Mm.
actually what got me to start this part of the business that I run. But then, because I started reading very good books in terms of grammatical constructions, I was used to good writing, right,
Mm.
and good grammar from
Mm.
books, right?
Mm.
And so as I grew older, and then I started reading Nigerian newspapers, there was this, I don't know, because that thing has stopped now, but
Mm.
automatically, if I picked a book at that time, the first things my eyes would go to were errors. And I literally would not be able to continue reading that book or whatever material it was until the error was corrected. It would, you know how there's like a hard stop, and
Mm.
automatically my eyes just goes to those errors. Anyway, so that's how I found that, I mean, I love to do it. You didn't have to pay me to edit any book because I just loved it, because I hated seeing it. Well, I still hate seeing errors.
Mm.
And then I got to school, I realized, oh wow, um I studied English, interestingly. So
Yeah.
now when I say that I studied English and I tell you that I was an editor, it looks like, oh, it's because you studied English that you were editing. Not really. It was because I was reading novels, them and B, that I was editing, right? Not because of the course I studied. And so because of that, by 200 level, and I
Mm.
was also active in my church in school,
Mm.
I found that this thing that I could do literally for free, people would were willing to pay me. And the
Mm.
pastor of my fellowship in school at the time was also somebody who encouraged all of us to start a business. Whatever you were
Mm.
doing, go and start something, register a
Fantastic.
business, have a business. It was just something very exciting. And so back in 200 level, I had my first business card with the name. I think it was
Mm.
sometime in January of 2006. And then the other interesting thing was how the name then became came about, because when I started it, it was like, oh, so who is Mosu in your family? But
Yeah.
there's no Mosu anywhere. I don't know anybody that is Mosu, or I don't know what the run
Yeah.
alternative is. But then the name came from, I mean, I'm a Christian,
Yeah.
and if you know the story of Moses and Aaron, it would
Mm.
really typify the type of relationship that we have with the
Mm.
clients that we serve. We
Mm.
don't own the vision. Our
Mm.
clients are the Moses. They are the ones who have direct instructions. They are the
Mm.
ones who have the vision. They are the
Mm.
ones who know what their business is supposed to do.
Mm.
Our responsibilities as their Aaron is to help them ensure that the people who need to understand their vision, they are able to engage them in very clear terms. So
Mm.
there's no miscommunication, there's no misunderstanding,
Dissonance. Mm.
and there's clarity,
Mm.
right, in understanding the vision of the clients so that they can provide mutual benefits for themselves. So
Mm.
essentially, we are like a middleman between the vision owners and the people who are going to benefit from that vision,
Mm.
exactly like it is in the story of Moses and Aaron in the Bible. And
Mm.
so, for some reason, I just brought the names together, and it became Mosron, and that's what it is today.
Unbelievable. I mean, most of the times, on a few occasions, I get to ask people what is the thinking behind the name of the organization. Like, how did you come by this name? And people share thoughts and all of that. I hardly do because maybe it's not a biggie for me. But today, I was looking at this. And I noted it down somewhere. I said, I'm going to ask you, what is Mostron? Is it that you are Motorai or something, or is it that I thought maybe you just knock some name to the normal practice is you basically just knock some names together and you take some from here from and then you bring them together and you're like this is it, right? So I was thinking that is so I said I will ask you. So it's quite instructive to see that okay, it's Moses and Aaron and mm, so you are their Aaron. They have the vision. They have what they want to do. You are their mouthpiece to help them bring that to communicate that so that there is no dissonance between what they have in mind and what is communicated.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know
And
it was quite profound for me, really. In getting that name, I don't know if it was however way the name came, because it was
yeah,
not. It's not so much in the combination of the names, but in terms of what those names represent, right? Because
mm,
that's essentially what the business is,
mm,
right? The responsibilities. owned by each person who carried that name in the Bible and what they
Mm.
were doing. What we now always remind ourselves is that we should make sure that when the visionary is not around, we don't lead the people astray or try to move clients around. We try to stay on course, but
Yeah.
ultimately, it's really that you have the vision. We really just help you amplify it and polish it so that the people who can benefit from you really get the message that you want to pass across.
Got the message. Thank you. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I have a few questions I want to ask you, but something is nudging at the back of my mind because you work in a space that is not necessarily like faith based, right? You serve organizations, and people within these organizations are from all over the place, right? I wouldn't say secular because no, it's not secular, but I think it's multi faith, multi religious kind of environment is where you work. Have you heard clients or key stakeholders within clients' organization asking you, what does your name mean? And then you explain it, and they're like, oh, really? You're a Christian? And all of this is about your faith? Do we really want to work with you? Have you had that?
Absolutely not. So when I started the business, I one of my first employers, when I was still working full time somewhere, because I always carried Muzron all around. It was just a side hustle, but it was never quiet. And
Mm.
my boss said, that people think that I'm saying moron, right? That why would I say Muzron? What does Muzron mean? It doesn't have any meaning. And I remember that
Mm.
my rebuttal then was, what does Dangote mean? What's the meaning of Dangote? It's just
Brilliant.
somebody's name.
Yeah.
It is what you call it that it's going to be. So if I say
Mm.
my name is Mosron, you better learn how to pronounce Mosron. If you care to ask the question, I'll be happy to answer. But I mean, when we started the business, it wasn't so much tell me about the name. It was more about can you do the work? Can you
And you
provide
do.
the value? Can you
Mm.
deliver the service? Are you an
Mm.
expert in this space? And for
Yeah.
me, when I started, it was more about establishing very quickly my expertise. It wasn't so much the name because the name can be anything, right? It's really the person and the capacity of the person behind the
Mm.
name that determines if people
Mm.
are going to work with you, not whatever your name is.
That's a very brilliant submission. Thanks a lot, Tolucomms, for sharing that. I'm totally on the same page with you. It's not so much about the yes, we know, of course, we like to brand, we have to do all of that, but at the end of the day, there is the first moment of truth, as we say it in the FMCG space, and there is a second moment of truth, which is more important, right? If you're able to deliver the value at the end of the day, like you said, who knows the meaning of Dangote today? I really don't know. I just use the product, right? I just
I
use the
have no
service.
idea.
I go
If
to the
I buy
bus
the
station
cement, is it going to stick? That's what I'm concerned about.
at the
I
end
have
of the
no
day.
business with
Yeah,
what his name means.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. So you started this. It's almost 20 years since
It
you
is.
started this, right?
It is.
So if you look at that timeline, right, 2006 till date, right,
Mhm.
at what point did did it begin to look like it doesn't this is it, right? This is not it doesn't look like this will continue as a side hustle. This is going to be like my life
Ah,
work. At what point
yeah.
did that begin to crystallize? And what
Mm.
were the factors that kind of, help you, get to that point?
Make that transition.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say that it became real in 2008, Q4 2008. But dial back a bit. I'm someone that likes to plan a lot. So I had, because I don't do it anymore, I had like a life plan that had certain milestones.
Mm.
And all of this was when I was in school. So when I was in school by 300, 400 level, I had my life sort of mapped out. This was the age I wanted to get married. This is how the
Mm.
house was going to be. This is where a
Mm.
big welcoming dictionary at the entrance of my house was going to be. This is when I wanted to resign from paid employment to start off Muzron as a full time. And that
Yeah.
benchmark was when I hit 40. Because in my
Mm.
mind, I thought that, oh, I would have had a Rolodex of very senior people, accomplished
Mm.
business owners who would know me if I'd worked in paid employment
Mm.
until that time. I had benchmarks. I must have worked in several multinationals because that's how I'm going to know
Mm-hmm.
people. And so bottom line, people would have known me first as an employee. So if I then come back and tell you, oh, now I started my thing, then you'll be, I mean, because you know me, you then give me business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that didn't happen like that. That didn't happen like that, obviously.
Tell us how it happened.
So yeah, I'll tell you. So obviously I worked for a while, and then in 2018, just after I had my second baby, I started to have some challenges with my job, right? So I use LinkedIn a lot. I mean, again, we'll get into that because the foundation, the headquarters of my business is on LinkedIn. I talk about it a lot,
Mm,
right? So 2018, I had my second baby, and then I was home for maternity leave, and I
mm,
got bored, right? So I thought, oh, people are just sort of getting interested in LinkedIn. Let me do a
mm,
free course because I've been using LinkedIn since at that
mm,
time, since 2010, right? So, and
mm.
it looks like people are getting interested. I wanted to also have a second phone number, a second line, because you see, I like money. Let me tell you upfront, I like money. So if something, if there's a legitimate way to make money, I'm
Me
very
too.
keen on exploring it.
Yeah.
Yes, so let me just be upfront. At that time in 2018, Q2, Q3 2018, WhatsApp status was just gaining ground in
Mm,
Nigeria. And then I'm on this digital marketing group, and I started to hear that people were getting paid for people viewing their WhatsApp status. Just to post on WhatsApp status, that was not costing me anything. And I heard people were getting paid. I mean, I'm just here, and I said, I'm bored. Babe, let's start doing WhatsApp status so that somebody will pay us too. But I didn't want my personal phone number to become publicly available,
mm.
a publicly available number.
Number.
So how do I get a new phone number? How do I get people to register to save that number so that they can start viewing my status? So that I
Mm.
can then go back to potential advertisers to say, oh, 500 people are looking at my
Doing
status.
my yeah.
Right? So that's how this idea came. Right? So what do I have in my hand that I can use to launch a new phone number? Um, and so I thought, okay, let me teach you how to use LinkedIn. I do it anyway. I use LinkedIn. I can teach people how to do it. Bottom line, I put out a post on my LinkedIn page that year, I think Q2 2018, and said, oh, I'm going to teach you how to use LinkedIn for free. It was going to be a WhatsApp class, right? For free. And so
Mm,
obviously for you to join the group that I was going to do the training in, you had to have my number. So I bought a new line,
mm.
right? So that I could separate my personal line from this new business
Because
venture I was going to start. So I used the LinkedIn training to get random people, but professionals, because the post was only on LinkedIn, to save the
yeah.
number. And then I got some 200 plus people who joined the WhatsApp group to learn how to use LinkedIn to get jobs or to get business, right? And then
Mm,
I finished that training, and people were like, "Oh, it was so good." Again, just like editing, I'm like, "Kilo, there's nothing, there's no big deal here. Now just go on LinkedIn, it's like
mm.
Facebook, but just be a more
Yeah.
professional person." Bottom
Yeah.
line, I turned that WhatsApp tutorial into a book, and that was my first book, and I was selling it. In that, it's an e-copy. In that book, there's a link there that says if you click on this link, make sure you store the number because I'm always posting job vacancies on my WhatsApp status. So save the
Mm.
number. Again, it was marketing gimmick. My aim was to get people to save my number so I can put a deck
Get
together
the
and show
viewership.
potential advertisers. I have 1,000 plus people view my WhatsApp status. Come and pay me. That was my aim. It was just that how was I going to package that business? I
Yeah.
was going to do something free because I had it and it wasn't costing me anything.
Yeah.
But so back to how I transitioned from paid employment to this one. Again, remember how I said Motion was always my baby and I was taking it around, but it was side hustle. Plus, I was from
Mm.
8 years away from my life plan of retiring at 40 to start my
Mm.
business full time. So because I turned this my WhatsApp tutorial into a book, and I mean, how much was it? 2,000 naira? Because it was just again, it wasn't about the book or the class. It was more about store my number so that I can get
Mm.
money because people are collecting money to
From
watch
WhatsApp
WhatsApp
status.
status, right? So I put out this book again because I've been very consistent with posting on LinkedIn all the while. I have
Mm.
a few followers on LinkedIn. So of course, when I did the book, I designed no, I paid somebody to design, but I put the content together on Canva, things like that.
Mm.
And then I put it up on LinkedIn and apparently no on my WhatsApp status. Apparently my boss saw it. Again, wasn't supposed to be a big deal because what's there? First of all, this is something that I will teach you in my sleep. Didn't cost
Yeah.
me anything. But then my boss saw it, and you know how things can be funny. Then started saying, oh, now that I'm making a lot of money, oh, he hopes that the salary that they're going to pay me is still going to be enough for me. Me, I just thought my boss was joking. Hey, what's the big deal? That he was just playing with me because I wasn't back to work, right? But then I
Sorry,
got
was it
back
was it sorry, was it
to
a one man business or a
no, no,
proper
no.
organization? It
No, no,
was okay.
it was a proper organization. Again, I
Mm,
have fairly good relationship with all my bosses, right? So
okay.
again, that's why I didn't take it very serious in terms of what he said. Do you see?
Mm,
But then he made that comment. He was just responding to my WhatsApp status while I was on leave. So when I returned to work, we started having a bit more friction, right? It was the
mm,
MD, and for some well, not for some reason, I'm somewhat outspoken when I'm on the job, right?
mm,
Because the nature of the work that I do, if you're not careful,
mm.
you will be sidelined because the output, the results of communications and public relations is not very tangible. It's not like sales,
Yeah,
it's not like
yeah,
marketing. So if
yeah.
you're not articulate, able to speak up for yourself and
Yeah.
defend the work that you're doing, you'll
Mm,
be relegated, right? No matter how senior you are, you'll just be kept to the side. So I'm
mm,
somewhat outspoken, and I had direct access to all my bosses, including the
mm,
chairman. Right. So
mm.
when I got back to work, it then became we'll be having strategy sessions on Thursday. Totally, is it because you have written a book? How much is the book? The book is just 2,000. I should not speak again because of
Yeah,
2,000 naira book. Again, remember that it wasn't about the money, it was about save my number.
yeah.
But I'm the only one who knew that. So I didn't get why my boss would just keep referencing the book. Is it because you have written a book? Oga, before I wrote a book, this is how I was speaking. Right? Because you can't I can't want to say something at work or join a strategy meeting and you'll be like, oh, Tolu, this one is not for you. That wasn't going to happen. Right? So I just didn't like the vibe, and I'm now speaking like a Gen Z. I didn't like that interaction at that time. And again, at that time, I'd spent 3 years on the job and it looked like there was a ceiling. Again, I wasn't willing to then merge comms and marketing or comms and sales. Um, but there wasn't anywhere they were going to promote me to because the work is still the work, right? So I started looking out for more jobs. Now, again, remember how I said I'm very active on LinkedIn. Before this time, I had recruiters sending me DMs asking if I was interested in jobs. And those requests got so much, I drafted a template rejection message for LinkedIn, right? Where recruiters will send me a message and it was just copy and paste and I'll just change the name because it was a lot. Now, at the time when I then wanted to change jobs, you would not believe that my DM was dry as a desert. Even for junior roles, I wasn't getting recruiters to say, Tolu, what are you selling? What can you do? And I'm saying that just before this time, I got so many job offers. I had to find a way to manage because again, I'm a communications person. You don't want to leave it, you don't want to close the door completely. So I made sure that I was always responding to people, but I had to respond to them in a way that I don't close the door so that whenever I was ready to change jobs, I could go back to you to say, oh, now I'm ready. Because at that time I was just starting out my family. I didn't want to because if I moved, how would I get maternity leave benefit? All of that. So I was saying no. And then I was now ready to move, and nobody was even checking to say, so come and do interview. It was crazy. But then I remembered Mosron and said, "Ah, okay, while we are waiting for this new job, I wasn't fired on that job. I just wanted to move, right? Because it felt like there wasn't anywhere else to progress further into. So I went back to my WhatsApp status um, and then did some bit of a packaging, as it were, for Mosron. So it's PR for 3 months. This is what I would deliver to your organization in terms of results. I will do X number of publications for you. I'll do XYZ. And it was all remote, right? And I posted it on my status. One of our mutual friends, so this my friend, like 4 or 5 of us, right? We all went to school together. We studied the same course. We all knew what we were all doing. But for some reason, this my friend who is the secretary and admissions officer now for ambassador schools in Northern said, oh, in fact, their school needs this now. She's going to facilitate a meeting with me for me with their chairman. He said, I'm available. Bottom line, I met the chairman. Now, this was me because how did I even come about the pricing? I'd never worked in an agency before. I was always on the client side. And so I calculated and said, oh, this is the amount I earn as salary per month. So if I can get like an average of that in 3 months, right? I'm okay. And that, at that time was like 500K for 3 months, right? And in my mind, I was like, oh, because I didn't want to work weekends, I wanted to, this false idea that was sold to us. If you're an entrepreneur, you own your time, you can control your time. It's a lie, oh, just to mention. Big lie,
We'll get to
right?
that.
So in
We'll
my
get to that in a sec.
yes, so in my mind, I sort of calculated it. Oh, so if I have the maximum number of clients I wanted to have per time was five, because in my head, one client, one day. So it couldn't be more than five, because if it was more than five, that means it will be spilling into my weekend, and I didn't want all of that too. So five clients, and in my mind it was I'll work for this client for one day, and then till the next other day, nothing for this client. So five clients, 500K, and it was just okay. Bottom line, I got this school, and I also did a payment plan, because in my mind, why would anybody pay me this amount? Even though I'd done the packaging. But I got to this school, and the man not only paid the full money, he paid it on the spot, that 500K. This was in 2018. Now, for some people, that's not big money. But at that time, I was earning, I think it was 180,000 per month. Um, and so, and what I told myself was, now keep in mind, I was still trying to get a more senior role as a communications professional. So it was most run at that time was still a stopgap, because remember my life plan. I was still 8 years away from
Where
starting
you
most run
want?
full time,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
at that time I had not necessarily worked with a multinational. Do you see?
Yeah.
Because again, in my life plan, I needed to have worked with a multinational, so that I'll know good people that have money. So that when I
Mm.
go back and tell those good people that have money that I've started my business, they would give me business.
Can build
So I
network.
was
Yeah.
still far away. I was still far away. So it wasn't Mosman wasn't supposed to go live at all, full time.
Mm.
But then I got this man who paid me 500K. He didn't tell me to go and bring a guarantor. He wasn't concerned I was going to run away with the money. He paid
This
me
was
that
7
money
years ago,
upfront.
right? Like 7, 8 years ago.
Yes. Yes. Um, and November that year, I then sat and told myself. In fact, once I got the money, first of all, I first was dancing and looking at that money in my account. Hey, there's somebody somewhere that can pay me 500K. And guess what? It was
Mm.
not that I was going to go to their office every day. It was remote. I was going to sit in my house, do interviews for them, set up their comms unit. And at the time of my choosing, I would go and train these people that I've recruited. Wow. Okay. So, and what I then told myself was, if there's one person that can pay me 500K for this bouquet that I've put together, then there must be at least one other person. That means there is a set of people out there. If only I can get to them that can pay me this amount, then I can be in business. And by the end of 2018, I had closed down all my job search activities and just focused on getting business for Mosron, right? But of course, by January 2019, I started to see the reality of starting a business, right? But again, maybe we'll get into it. But as that 500K started to deplete, I started asking myself existential questions. Are you sure this is for you? Because I'm someone who has always had our own money. I've done quite a number of businesses. While I was on campus, I sold biscuits. There's this type of biscuit. I sold donuts to students. I'm always doing something that is just going to bring in money. So I'm not used to not having my own money, right? And then 500K was going. There was no salary that I was expecting. Tolu, is this something that we can cope with? Because I don't think this part is for us. So it was a lot. It was a lot. I wrote an article that is still somewhere online now. And Leading Ladies Africa published it at the time. And it was really fueled by hunger. I was afraid I was going to go hungry. Because there was no at that time, again, remember how I said I expect what I've always known, or what we've always been told, is that you must know people to start a business, particularly service businesses, right? Because if I was selling a product, you don't necessarily need to know the founder of a product, right? If the product is good, people will mostly buy. If it's a service, people are buying the person delivering the service, not the name, because the name is meaningless. It's the capacity of the person behind that name to deliver that service that will make people pay it. And at this time, nobody knew my father from wherever. I mean, my father was even long past. So nobody knew me. There wasn't any antecedent as such. There wasn't any agency experience. There was no big name in terms of a brand behind me. So how was I going to get people to pay for anything? And there was no money in my accounts.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was it was a trying moment for me. It was a trying moment, but I didn't leave it. I didn't leave it.
Tolulope, I have like a million and one questions just bubbling in my because of all the fantastic things that you have shared, right? So I'm just trying to
Mhm.
kind of put my mind under control to say, okay, Kunle, relax. Let's take it one step at a time. You have Tolulope here now.
Please,
Let's take it one at
please.
a time, right? But
Mhm.
let me just if I think just to remain on this particular train, I will go back to some of the other questions later. How then did you get to that point where you are able to transition from supporting or providing consulting service for just one single outfit or business, right, in terms of that
Mhm.
school, to the point where you're now dealing with well established and well founded organization? I saw Mandelas, I saw all sort of organizations on your profile. How did you
Yeah.
navigate that? I mean, that's just 7 years ago. Now we know that the business started 2006, quite all right. 2018 was a
Mhm.
defining moment, right? But even at that,
Correct.
you had just one client, right? And you're still like,
Mhm.
should we go back to our 9 to 5, or should we scale
Mhm.
this, right? You still have those
Mhm.
fears, right? How then that 7 years ago you look back and you're like, this is it, right? Because now it looks
Yeah.
like everything is set. What happened?
Mm. Well, so you know how when somebody is hungry, oh, there's a certain level of inspiration. Honestly, there's a certain
Hmm.
level of inspiration that you can only access when you are hungry,
Hmm.
and that's not a joke. Honestly,
Now that
when you are
hunger,
hungry and you don't have backup, because you
I'm
know
gonna say
that.
so. That hunger, should we call it?
Mhm.
Is it like normal food
No, no,
hunger
no, no.
or
This one,
hunger for
food,
sustenance?
sir. No, 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 no. No, no, no. You know, it is when you are fed physically that you can start to look at the other definitions of hunger. Mm-mm. I'm talking
Wow,
about real life. If I don't have
proper
money, I'm
proper
not going to
hunger,
eat. Proper
kind of.
hunger, physical hunger,
Yeah,
right?
I see.
Hunger that does not have backup. There's nobody you are going
Hmm.
to ask to say, I'm going to get money from this person, right?
Hmm.
It's interesting. I come from a family of all girls. I'm the third of four. My baby is
Hmm.
quite a distance from me. So you know
Yeah.
how for a while online you'll say, "Oh, last bonds, you have elder people, elder siblings that you can go and ask for money."
Hmm.
My family was not trained like that. Everybody for yourself, God for us all, right? And so I'm not the kind of person who had this background of there was somebody you could ask, and my siblings were doing well, right? But in my family, once you get married, it's you and your God. All right. Again, it was also that I'm not used to not having my own money. So the fact that I was looking at a blank bank account was disastrous for me. And the money was not going to come from anywhere. Like I said, there's a level of inspiration, there's a level of divinity that you access when you are desperate and you are hungry. I got into that frame in Q1 2019, right? God, what am I going to do? Where will I go? And guess what? At the time when I resigned from my job, my mom started crying around. Tolu Taloniko resign. Ah, you want to rely on a man exclusively, as in, so is your husband that you'll not be waiting for to give you money for my. Anyway, it was later that I heard that because she didn't say that to me. She was just concerned and she was telling my baby sister about it. She wouldn't have said that because I've done it, I've done it. There's nothing you're going to do about it. Um, but at that time, it was something just had to give, right? And so that's why I say that LinkedIn is the headquarters of my business. So now I've been on LinkedIn, like I said, since 2010, and when it was just gaining grounds in Nigeria. Now, this was me that back to my life plan. I thought I needed to know certain kinds of people to be able to make a success of this business. And at the time when I then decided to do the business full time, I had absolutely nobody. I didn't even know any name in the industry, right? Because I wasn't necessarily in the industry when I was going to start Mosron full time. I was on the client side, and on the client side of work, it wasn't necessarily an industry conversation. You were more involved in the industry of your employer, right? So I didn't know anybody in PR. I didn't even know what questions to ask. But then, thank God for LinkedIn. I'm very, very passionate about the beauty of the internet, how the internet has transformed people's lives, including mine. Because without the internet, without LinkedIn, obviously my business wouldn't be here today. I would likely still be, because there was a time in my life when I had just finished service and I worked, for those who are familiar with Lagos. I worked from, I don't know the names now, but I think it's Oba Akran to this Christ Embassy area with my CVs. So this time it wasn't internet, and submission of CVs was not in at the time. But I walked. There it wasn't that I was jumping buses. Oh, I was checking on the road. Anywhere I see security that showed their face, Oga Bega, they find work. Right? So that was what I was coming from. And so now having the internet, where there was an opportunity for me to just express myself, but not express myself as me, as Tolu, because who cares about Tolu? Who are you? Who do you know? What do you have? Nothing. However, the thing that I had that nobody could take away from me was my knowledge of communications and my expertise in it. Right? And so, what I focused on doing on LinkedIn was to write about my profession and the work I was doing, the challenges I faced in business. I wrote it there. And it's so interesting. And that's why when people ask me for mentorship, what else do you want me to say? What was there to mentor? Everything I went through professionally is on my LinkedIn. The times when clients or prospective clients turned down my proposal, when I questioned my capacity to do work, I wrote about it on LinkedIn. So if anybody sees Tolucomms now and says, "Oh, Tolucom, I mentor me," no, no, no. If you are asking me for mentorship now, it's because you've not read what I've written, and if you've not read it, that means you're not ready. Do you see? Um, and so I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn. And then what I then started to do, I did a so in marketing, it's called a persona, right?
Mm.
What does the client, your ideal client, what do they look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Like a profiling of some sort, right?
Thank you. Profiling. And so I took a step back. This chairman of the ambassador schools, he's a certain kind of person. He's at a certain level in his organization that he could make a decision on the spot and pay me on the spot for my services. And so I started to target people like him, right? Now, normally, for people who are starting out, they will typically target people who are either mid level managers, PR managers, or comms managers. And I remember, who can make decisions, because they would then need to essentially advocate for me in front of their bosses. Now, this was me that was hungry. So I didn't have a lot of time to explain, to say, "Oh, Atolu, my boss is not available." Your boss is not available. Okay. So it was in my best interest to go straight for the bosses. Again, thank God for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn shows you designations. Um, yes, it was LinkedIn was it for me. So essentially what I did, I wrote a template DM. You see, I do a lot of things by template because there's no point reinventing the wheel. I wrote a template message, a similitude of what I posted on my WhatsApp status, that got my friend to introduce me to a chairman. How is your business starting out this year? What are your plans? I can deliver this, and this for you in terms of results, because I realized very quickly that I was going to fall into this rabbit hole of using my industry jargons to people who were non-industry people, business leaders who were non-industry people that could not understand what I was saying. But if I spoke about results, not the process, they would understand it quickly. So I wrote this template DMs, and without exaggerating, I maybe sent to about 100 people. Now, 100 seems small, but only if you understand the process of getting the 100. Now, remember that I have a client profile that I was targeting. And the process of finding those guys, because you can just go on LinkedIn, and at that time you will see people say, "Oh, I'm CEO that is in 200 level. Or I'm the managing director that is selling Zobo." That's not my audience, right? So it was two pronged. I was writing articles, and the content was very specific, and the optimization, the how I optimize those content, I was specifically targeting very senior executives. In fact, I would deliberately, because I'll post on LinkedIn, bring the link to my WhatsApp status, and I would deliberately mention, if you are not a senior executive, if you are not a C-suite executive, don't bother reading, because this content is not for you. I wasn't concerned about the number of likes. I wasn't interested in the number of impressions, right? I was interested in the quality of people who were reading it. And LinkedIn is beautiful. If you click on this view more, so if you are the author of a post, for example, and you want to look at insights, if you click on that insight, it tells you the company, the top companies where your readers are, where your readers are working. It tells you the countries or the space, the location. It tells you their seniority level. And so for each time I was sending that my 100 plus DMs, I would post content. 24 to 48 hours later, I would look at the insight of that post. And that was how I started to find companies that I'd never heard of before, but that were doing phenomenal work. I'm not talking about PR companies, right? And so when I find those companies, because their people were reading my content, I would find those companies, I would go to the company's LinkedIn page. From the company's LinkedIn page, I would go to their website. From their website, I would find the chief executive officer, group managing director, people at that level. I would get the name of those people on their website, come back to LinkedIn and check if those people were there. If they are there, I would then send them this DM for each of these 100, right? And like I said, I sent about this 100 plus over time, right? And oh, yeah, I got responses. Oh, well done, when we're ready, we'll reach out to you if they responded. But you see, my Jesus never fails. Because in
Yeah.
February, yes, it doesn't. It doesn't fail. It doesn't fail. You just
Yeah.
need to be consistent with it. In
Mm.
February of 2019, when I started this process, one man responded to that DM. He's the group chief executive officer of I've forgotten the group name now. So Outsource Global is a subsidiary under the group. I can't remember the group company. But he's the group chief executive officer, and he responded to that DM. And for whatever reason, he says, oh, he doesn't check LinkedIn normally. Oh. He just said he should check today. Ah, it's my Jesus that is pushing you, sir. I didn't say that. But he checked his LinkedIn that day and he responded. And he said, oh, let's have a meeting. Now, so again, remember that I'm coming from a life plan that says the process to get clients is that you must know people one on one. This was pre COVID, right? You must know people. You must have a Rolodex. You must have their phone number. I didn't know anybody. This man responded. And how I got his DM, his name, was through this process of somebody from your company read it. I go and check your company. Then I go to your website and then I find your name and then I send you a DM. He responded in February. We eventually didn't have him because he kept traveling. He was not around, whatever. We eventually had the meeting, the first meeting in April of 2019. By May of 2019, we had signed a contract. I like to talk about the number. It was 10 million naira to provide services for 3 subsidiaries. Oh, my Jesus
Ooh.
is good. My brother, remember how just 6 months before I was doing Thanksgiving for 500K. And then I got, honestly, when people say, oh, you need to know people, I don't believe it, right? So I've evolved a bit, right? But because the internet is there, it depends on what you're doing with the internet. And it is what you ask of the internet that it will deliver to you, right? This man, and it was interesting. So that meeting didn't just lead to what 10 million naira contract. No, no, no. There was interesting feedback because I met the man first, and then he says, "Oh, let's meet the MDs of the subsidiaries." And there were three people plus him, and so I had this board presentation. Now, this was also the time when we were taught, "Oh, if you even if you are the only person in the business, you must always say we." Right? So I went into the presentation as a we company. Of course, it was still Mozron, but I was the one designing the proposal. I was the one coming up with strategy. I was the secretary sending reminders. I was the person doing the invoice. One woman mopo, right? But I mean, let the money be complete. Let me see something in this account because hunger is in front. Okay. So I had that board meeting, and I remember where I was when that man called me. Not that I got the contract. Now, there was one woman on that, the MD of Outsource Global was in that meeting. And when I went into the meeting, I went in asking questions. Also, what would you like us to do for you? What's the challenge that your company has? I asked that of all the subsidiary MDs. And when I finished, the woman was particularly quiet throughout the presentation. And when I finished the presentation, she said, Tolu, it doesn't seem like you're ready. Ready, Ke? I'm ready, ma. I wasn't doing like that, but in my mind, I was like, this woman should not be the clog in the wheel
I can't
of
be
my
more
son.
ready.
Because the men were like,
Bring it on.
because I mean, I think the strategies were good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But apparently, because I had asked her a question, the expectation, and that's when I started to learn the work. Well, the
Mm,
business side of the work.
mm,
Because the expectation was if I was coming to a meeting with a client, it should not be the client's responsibility to tell me about their business. I should have done my research. I should
mm,
have known what their issues are. So the
mm,
only thing I should be coming into that meeting not knowing is what is not publicly available. If it is
mm.
publicly available, I must be ready. I must
I
go
agree.
into that meeting with
Mm,
answers to their questions, not me
mm,
asking them, so what's your problem? I must tell them I know your problem. And in fact, I can tell you the solution right now. Thank God
mm,
for her feedback that day. Because actually, so now I can tell you thank God, but at that time it looked like so after you did all this one, you got the meeting, and then I got to board level and I flopped. So I
mm,
thought Onga was still calling me. But I remember where I was. I was in the markets around my house. It's not shopping complex market or open market like we have in Lagos.
Ojiwe.
When the GCA, yeah, so when the GCO called me, Tolu, it's not like I mean the feedback that the MD gave was correct, but I still think that you can do this thing. My gosh, like I said, I didn't know this man from Adam. I don't know what he told the other MDs, but this was the GCO. And said, Tolu, don't worry. I think you can do it, but just make sure that when you come the next time, make sure that you've read up on it. I didn't know this man from Adam, and he was just giving me the cheat code. Of course, me too, I didn't fall my own hand. When I went the next time, I was too prepared. And I came out from that engagement and I got the contract. I said, hey, God. God. So that means they are human beings. Each time I got a contract after that ambassador's experience, what I was telling myself, if one person can pay me, there are more people who can pay. I just need to find them. When this 10 million naira man paid, it was obvious. My money is there somewhere. If I can find them, they will give me. In fact, they are waiting for me to come and say I want the money. If I've not gotten the money, it's because I've not asked the right people. The money is just waiting. Tolu, what are you doing? I slept on LinkedIn. I got the contract. But then I got the contract and started executing, and that's where again I learned another lesson. So you see, I'm a very value focused person. And if I feel I'm not giving you value, I don't think you should be paying me any money. That's very short sighted, as an aside. Very short sighted. Contract is contract. If contract says you should pay, excuse me, please pay me my money. Let it be complete. Right? But again, it was the first like major there wasn't anybody like a buffer. It was strictly on a basis of merit that I got this engagement. And then of course grace. But then we started the work. It was a reputational issue at the time. 6 weeks we had done it and we had a full year's contract. Me, I got bored. They were paying our invoices, but there was no work as such again. And so I sent a WhatsApp message to the MD for you to know that I was an otondo. Sorry, I was a novice
Yeah,
as a
you're
business
naive.
owner.
Yeah.
Very naive. I sent a WhatsApp message to the founder, to the MD. Now, this is the MD of the subsidiary. Madam, there's really nothing going on, right? I don't think that it's fair for you to be paying me when there's not a lot of work going. Now, this is a company that had their own in-house communications team, right? I mean, so and I'm available if there's anything. I mean, they can just call me, but let's just give space, right? So that if there's any major project coming on board, then you guys can call me back, and then um I will come on board again. So I used my hand to cut short the 10 million naira contract because there wasn't a lot of requests for work to do, even though I had an active contract. By myself, I said, I don't want the money again. Can you see that was naive? Obviously, the business owner who wants to be paying money, you say you don't want money again. Ah, Tolu, you are right. Actually, I think you are right. So of course she canceled the contract and said, sure, sure, sure. When we have a project, we'll call you. I was happy because she said she'll call me, right? And would you see my Jesus? I'm not sure it was up because I'm very active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. It was not up to 2 weeks. Now, this woman normally, she's not anybody that would have any reputational issues online. You would even hardly find her online. That's how on Twitter. Not up to 2 weeks after used my hand to cancel the contract, this woman had a crisis because people started dragging her online. And guess who was no longer in contract to provide services to be paid? Me. Guess who the in-house people then started calling for free advisory because Shebi, you are just our consultant just now. You should be able to support us this period. And guess who could not send an invoice because you said, since there's no work, if there's any small issue, you can call me. So of course the MD told our in-house people to call Tolu now that she'll be able to guide them. And then of course in-house people called. I couldn't say no and I couldn't send an invoice because it was more like advisory and I was not directly advising the founder. And I also didn't want to ruin the relationship so that it doesn't look like Tolu likes money too much. Because I was just like last week that we stopped paying you. Why are you saying you cannot provide this one to us again? Maybe just to tell us what we can do. I provided advice to the in-house guys. The issue was because it was just like God wanted me to learn that lesson and to show me how stupid I am, right? Because I'm saying that this is somebody that would normally, there was absolutely no reason for that issue to have come up for her. She's not active online. This person just woke up that day and just mentioned her name. Anyway, that's how I provided free service. And then I started having sleepless night. Everybody come and see what happened. Do you get? So I was in a digital marketing group, and that's how I started ranting to some people who were also just starting out their business, but also young. Guys, see what I did. Am I not stupid? This thing I'm saying at that time, I'm sure I told it to not less than 10 people. But it was just me lamenting because they couldn't provide a solution. Because how, I don't know. Tolu, what do you mean by you told them not to pay you again? It sounded very stupid. But me, I thought, oh, if I'm not really providing value, let's not just be collecting free money. Anyway, thankfully, I also met a couple of people. One of the people I met at that time, Nkechi Alade, she's a business solutions consultant. And I mentioned it to her, and then she told me, I met her from Twitter. We had the hangouts. And then she told me, I told you that she's also been in a similar situation and that what she learned to do was to include one clause in her contract. Regardless of the ebb and flow of services or requests, the agreed monthly sum is still payable. KO, you see that clause. First of all, it wasn't so much the client, because it wasn't like my clients were complaining. It was that I now had legal justification
Reason to
on
continue.
my own part to continue to send invoices, whether there was an active project or not. Do you
Mm,
see? So recall
mm,
this client that I said that in the first 6 weeks we had sort of resolved the reputational crisis they had.
mm.
But you see that 6 weeks, if we were going to space it out in terms of normal timelines,
Normal
we would
work
maybe have spent like 6 months, 9 months, right? So, but there was a lot of pressure, and it was something
within
very
that
urgent.
period.
Yeah, that short time period. So I
Mm.
didn't account for the fact that, I had to do a lot of work in that short
You
period,
over index
right?
within that very small period that ordinarily maybe 6 months of work that you had to do
Yeah,
within a very short.
that had to do within that short period. And I still accepted, I was still paid the amount that I would have been paid for just one
Mm,
month, as
mm,
opposed to a combination of all those
yeah,
months.
yeah.
Well, anyway, but you see that one clause that I then started to include in my contract. Oh, it was a balm in my soul, right?
Mm,
Because for me, it wasn't that my clients were complaining about paying, it was that I was not convinced that I
comfortable.
should be charging them
Mm,
because I wasn't providing the services.
mm,
And that's how I remembered with that conversation that was providing services. I may have provided those services in bulk, as it were,
yeah.
upfront. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean I shouldn't be paid for the other time because
Yeah.
you never know when crisis will come. And that's
Mm,
when I learned about things like retainers. Because remember how I said I'd never worked in an agency. I don't know how agencies work. I don't know how
mm,
retainers work. I didn't even understand the
mm,
language that they
mm.
use, right? And so that was another major lesson in my transition. But I'm thankful that I learned those lessons early enough. And
Mm,
that was in 2019 because by 2020 I faced another set of learning lessons.
mm. So, look, thanks a lot for sharing that. I mean, if I want to unpack this, we'll spend the rest of today just unpacking it, right? But I think the key thing I want to pull out of this, first of all, is the fact that you are so value conscious as an entrepreneur. And yes, maybe one or two things got mismanaged, right? But you see that mindset, I'm sure, is one of the key contributor to how fast you've been able to go, right? Because you want to add value. You don't want to take something for nothing. You understand? Yes, things can be managed differently. Things can be. Do you get what I mean? But for me, I think it's a biggie, right? It's a big deal, and I think the another key thing that I also pull out of this is how intentional you were in profiling your target audience and the boldness you had. Some of us don't have that level of boldness. It's really bold, right? For you to number one, you have that clarity to say that, come, we don't have time to waste, right? Survival is at risk here, right? Who do we need to be having a conversation with? And you wrote the article. Look at where your viewership or the readership was coming from, or the engagement was coming from. Went out there to go and check their website about them. You see the CEO, and then you came back and then DM them. And yes, maybe the response rate is not like 50% or 10% or 20%, but even the 2% or the 1%,
Made up for all of them.
it's enough. It's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's enough.
Absolutely.
It's one. And now I will
Absolutely.
now now let me throw you a little curveball. Now,
Mhm.
I was looking at your website and I was trying to see, okay, I went to the about us to say that just let me understand a little bit about, you know, Mosdron and all of that, and let me understand. And I couldn't find any article on you, right? Is it that you don't want
Oh.
people to be coming into your DM, like you entered into some
Well,
people's DM,
all right. I see what you mean. Well, so
like you entered
again,
into some people's DM and
I
all
get
that?
that. I get that. I get what you're saying. Oh, interestingly, I've never thought about it from that perspective. But no, it's me that
I'm
still
just
needs to be entering people's DMs.
I'm just kidding. Don't mind me,
There's
but
no need to look for no, but I hear you. But the reason there is no information about teams, for example, on
mm,
our website is it says niche team. And I don't believe that information about the team should be centered around the founder, right? Particularly at the company's website, right? And also because sometimes we have team members who stay with us a short while and then sometimes they also leave. And I didn't, again, so it's about managing costs. If I'm going to put up team members, that means that each time they leave, I need to update content on the website. I would have to pay people for that. Um, and my own profile also changes. I'm either winning awards, or I'm publishing a book, or I've delivered a conference. I typically update my profile maybe twice a year, right? It would mean that I need back end website administrators to do all of that. Was just, and it's not necessarily going to bring in money.
mm,
Everything you see on that website is designed to
mm.
say, come and
To
work for
drive
us.
click through and driving
However,
people.
yeah. However, if you are then looking for team members or you are looking for the founder of Muslim Communications, you literally just need to search on the internet.
They'll find
Do
you.
you see?
Mm,
Because what I've then done, because before I started Musron, I was already Tolu Olorondero.
yeah.
Even with Musron, I still have my own independent identity because I do
Mm,
more than Musron.
mm,
There's Nigerian women in PR that sort of increase visibility for our work in the industry. But I'm still an independent person. As Tolucomms, I provide consultancy services for C-suite executives. I deliver trainings outside of the framework of Muslim, right? I'm one of those people who believe that whether you're a founder or you're a very senior executive or you're the MD, there is more to you than your designation, right? So many times I don't either introduce myself as the founder of something, I introduce myself as me and the work that I do. That work can then be expanded into several other places. When I teach LinkedIn to employees, I don't encourage you to have, so if you're familiar with LinkedIn, if you don't populate this part in your designation, right? Where you tick it so that it shows in your headline, LinkedIn automatically populates that place for you. I am one of those people who will tell employees, don't allow LinkedIn show everybody that this is your designation where you work in your headline, right? Because you are more than that. You are more than that designation. What if you leave the job tomorrow? Who do you become? There has to be more to you than the work, the job that you're doing at the moment. That's something I believe in, the full expression of an individual beyond the work that they're doing, right? And just your designation cannot capture all of it.
I get that. I mean, I get it because basically I was just trying to understand, if the size of this team and the spread out of the team, and of course, this, and I was like, okay,
Well,
I'll
could
ask.
be a reason. Well, yeah. So again, like I said, because we then have quite some, most of the time when I started, I had quite junior team members because I was still the one doing the heavy lifting
Mm,
and they were very junior. Now
mm,
imagine coming to a website where we're saying that we provide services to clients in sub-Saharan Africa and
mm,
Europe, and you're seeing, apart from the founder, other team members with 1 year experience. If I
yeah,
were even the person, I would not trust them,
it will not.
right?
Mm,
Right.
that
So
makes
right now,
sense.
what we do till now is to let the quality of work we've done for other clients speak for us. So it's not
Mm,
necessarily about the composition of the team; it's about the results of the
the
team.
delivery.
Who the
Mm,
team are is not necessarily important. Why? Because there's a template, there's a
mm,
process, a protocol that we've built. Whether you have 5 years experience or you
yeah.
have 1 year experience, you
Mm,
come into the team to deliver that protocol for the
mm,
client. So it is
mm,
the protocol that delivers the results, not
mm,
necessarily the people.
the
Because you must
people.
follow this part. It is this pattern, it is this process that has
Mm,
delivered results for us, for clients across board. We are
mm,
sector agnostic, but we don't
mm,
do consumer facing brands,
yeah.
right? It is that protocol that delivers the results, not necessarily the people. Because whoever you are, once you come into the team, you must align with this protocol that we
Mm.
use to deliver services to clients. So it's not necessarily about the people.
About the person or the.
It's about, yes, it could be anybody. It could be anybody. The result is the same. The process is the same.
Is the same. Got that, and I want to double click a little into that. But before we do that, I want us to have a quick conversation around the kind of the profile of organization that you work for, right? Because initially we spoke about the profile, or you mentioned around the profile of the individual you are targeting when you are just kind
Correct.
of trying to make
Right.
that jump,
Yeah.
right? But now it looks like you've pivoted into profiling organizations. So number one,
Organizations.
you mentioned way back that number you only serve or provide support services for organizations that have each certain number of years in terms of operations, right? I think you mentioned something like they need to be certain number of years in terms of how long they've been in business. One, and then number two, you mentioned something now around the fact that you do not work with organizations that have like consumer facing brands, something like I think
Right. Okay.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it looks to
Mhm.
me like you have a set of filter through which
Yes.
you pass your potential clientele through to say that this is
Correct.
for me, this is not for me. Can you double click into that for our
Sure.
audience?
Okay. So remember, at some point, I mentioned that I'm mostly an introvert when I'm not at work. I'm at
Yeah.
work. You would not believe if I told you I'm an introvert, right?
Mm,
So that sort of extends into the kind of services and the kinds of brands that we provide services to,
mm-hmm.
right? We work with business to business organizations. So
Okay.
if there is a business that provides services to individual mass market we would not work with them, right?
Okay.
Because the service requirements for brands that engages or provides products or services to
Mm.
mass market,
Directly
the
to
service
consumers.
requirements, consumers, yes, the requirement is a bit
Not
different.
as
You have to
Tesla.
talk a lot. You must always be out there. You are always on. Do you
Mm.
see? At the time when I started, because it was really just me doing the work, I'm not an always on person. I'm more of a strategic, say one thing and let it sit with the person, dwell with it, right? It leaves you thinking. FMCG PR services is not like that. You must always be out there, you must always be in their faces. I mean, I could not imagine. It's the same reason, for example, why we don't provide services to hospitality businesses, to lifestyle businesses, right? Hospitality, I'm an indoors person. I don't even understand the happening places. We don't do music because I'm not a that type of music person. Um, I mean, generally, conservative businesses are our own. That's our thing. And at the time we started, PR in Nigeria was not niched. You see, so again, I had a lot of pushback from some of the senior people I spoke with. Anywhere money is coming from, do it. Don't spoil my life. Do you see? Because if I started providing services to these kinds of businesses that I don't have an affinity with, I will fail. And you have mentioned it correctly about value. If I don't think I can provide value to you, I'm not going to come near you. And I'm very upfront with clients. And that's something that is critical. One of our values at Musron Communications is transparency, even Nigerian women in PR. If we get a brief, we cannot do it. We will tell you. This is the extent of work that we can do. We are also very ethical in our service provision. One of the things I always remind my team members, right? And for the few businesses that have worked with us, particularly when it comes to crisis management, if you stole money and you are looking for a PR firm to help you
To
wash your
launder your
image,
image.
no, no, no,
To
that's not us.
launder your image. Okay.
Very interesting scenario. Some
Mm.
three, in Nigeria a while back, there was quite a bit of crisis for crowdfunding platforms that were not able to pay back returns. And again, crisis, you really can't come to the front to say, "Oh, I'm the one who managed this." But I directly managed some of those crises, either consulting or directly managing them. And then there was one that came to me, where I was invited to manage that crisis for them. And okay, I see that you guys cannot pay. That's fine. What happened? Why can't you pay? Why did you not pay? And it was bad investment. Okay. Before we can take the brief, I must see your books. All of these conversations happened before engagement. Do you see? I must see your books. I must have concrete evidence that the reason you are not able to pay back investor money is not because of
It's real.
mismanagement.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's not because somebody stole and then you're looking for somebody that can speak
Mm.
English and no
Mm.
strategy to help you cover it up. Right? I believe that as a public relations consultant, I have a responsibility both to the general public and to my clients. Right? It's a lot of conversation around it, but I don't believe that it is fair, whether to the general public or even to the client, to do things that is advantageous to my client at the detriment of the general public, because my own reputation is also at stake, right? One can then have that conversation about, oh, everybody is innocent until proven guilty. And then I say, thankfully, I'm not a lawyer. If I were a lawyer, I'm not sure that this stance would also be different. If, however, somebody says they are not able to pay because we mismanaged and we want to tell the public the truth, I'm happy, right? Because first you have acknowledged that you did something wrong. What you
Mm.
are then inviting us to do is to help you manage the impact of the
Communication
fallout,
and impact. Yeah.
not to help you cover it up and speak grammar to confuse people. No, I wouldn't do that. Right? So all these filters are really there first to help us manage our own reputation, right? As a service provider. If you are not an ethical business, it is very likely that we will not work with you. It's not even very likely. We will not work with you, right? And so what he also does is to help us filter the quality of clients that come to us, right? So it's business to business, it's social impact as well. And the reason we started doing social impact was because at that time also, When organizations were talking about social impact, it was more about, oh, let's give them shoes, let's go and do an event, and then give people food, and then we've done impact talk. And the question for me was always, so after we eat, what else? What next? How is this thing going to change people's lives? And so the fallout of that was, number one, I then started Nigerian Women in PR, essentially to provide me a platform really to deliver impact as I thought it should be delivered. Do you understand? So it's so interesting. My businesses are really like an extension of the thing I desire to see that I didn't really find. And while instead of waiting for somebody to do it and show it as a template so that if anybody else wanted to do it, they can follow this process or this platform that you've created, as opposed to just saying it, and then they'll ask you, if he easy, you do am. How do they
You
even
should
say
don't
it?
do
If he easy, do am.
it.
Yeah. So nobody can come back and tell me now if he easy, do am. I don't do am several times, and I'm
I've
here.
done.
If I'm
Yeah.
telling you it works, it's not because it's theory. It's because I've put all my money where all my mouth is, and I
Is
can guarantee you that it works. We have all these checks. And it was some of them was also based on experience. So, like I said, we provide services to organizations and C-suite executives.
yeah.
Now, when I started, we didn't have any criteria, as it were, for the
Mm,
C-suite executives. If you're a senior executive and you wanted us to deliver personal branding, or now that we call it
mm,
executive branding, then we would if you could pay us.
mm.
Until we delivered for a couple of people, and I realized, C-suite has category. Do you
Okay.
see? Yeah. So today at Mosron, if you
Mm,
don't have at least 15 years experience as a
mm.
C-suite executive, we would not provide services to you. If you
As
came
a,
to us and said, "Oh, as an executive, an individual,
they
so
must have
C-suite,
been
yes."
they must have been
No, no, no,
enrolled at C-suite level for
no.
15
You
years
must have
or
worked
cumulative. Okay.
cumulative 15 years.
Okay.
Because after working in properly structured places for 15 years, there's certain things you know. Of
Yeah.
course, there's also the financial responsibility there. After
Hmm.
15 years, you're at a certain level where you're likely able to afford our services.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing the pitch and all of that. And then I send you my invoice, you're like, Tolu, this is my salary for the whole year. That's a waste of our life. Let's not do it, right?
Mm,
Just so, again, but that was something we learned because we he made mistakes of not having those checks, right? And the other part of it is for an executive who has not had that level of experience in terms of years and actual hands-on work. It's difficult for you to get them to say something that is honestly sensible, that is newsworthy. Now, remember that it's executive branding, and our executive branding service is really establishing these executives as thought leaders in their industry. How can you be a thought leader with 5 years experience? What are you thoughting? What are you leading? What have you done? Exactly. Nothing. You're still learning. You should still be reporting to like three, four persons, five persons. There's no leadership in that amount of experience. Even though today, I mean, if you check online, everybody is a personal brand, everybody is a leader. But I mean, there are now checks and there are things that you will know if this one is fluff, if it's AI that wrote the article, or this one is coming from experience. And this one came about because, I mean, we had an opportunity to pitch to the BBC. It's so interesting. And they responded to us. And then they were asking us, so what has this person really done? Where's their track record? Unfortunately, I mean, they were doing impact work. They could see the work. It was 3, 4 years, but this person was so young. There was no other experience backing up the work that they were doing. And the story didn't fly. Right now, for a PR or a communications professional, you know how the opportunity that you have to pitch to BBC and they respond is almost once in a lifetime, particularly for those of us from this side of town that does not have a contact, because that's the other thing. We were sending these pitches not because we knew the people at the receiving end, but we were because of the value or the worth of the story.
sorry.
And we packaged it and we sent it. They responded, but our clients did not
And then they
have
double click and they're
they
like,
didn't have enough
the weight.
background. They didn't have the
Mm,
weight to carry this global visibility. And that's
mm,
another thing that we do at Mosron. Many times you have prospective clients come to us to say, "Oh, Tolu, I want to be on channels. I want to
mm,
be on CNN." First of all, a client who comes to us to say, "Tolu, I want to be on channels," we don't work with you. Why?
mm.
If you know the answer to your problem, you should just go ahead and do it. You don't need a
Mm,
consultant. That's why
mm,
Mosron is not styled as an agency. You see, I
mm.
believe that agencies are implementation
Partners.
partners,
Mm.
right? They just implement, meaning that the business leaders have sat in
There's a
their offices,
strategy already.
they've done the strategy, and they're looking for people to implement. We don't
Mm.
do that, right? We, as consultants, you come to us with a business problem. This is a challenge my business is having. We then sit down with your business and look at it end to end, right? Because you may think you have a communication problem. It could be a staffing problem that you have. It could be that when people are calling your team members or your customer care, they're just chewing gum in people's ears, and then you say you have a communication problem. Or your website is always down and you say you have a communication problem. Those are internal things. So, in terms of the process, one of the key processes that we do, we make sure that the internal processes of our clients are ready first. You are ready for the visibility we are going to bring to you when the
Yeah.
public interacts with you,
Otherwise, it's a
right?
waste of time.
Otherwise,
Mm.
you are just going to, beyond waste of time, you are going to have a crisis on your hand,
Yeah,
right?
because
You that we should still be packaging in one small corner. Let the world not know that you have
yeah,
problem. You now go with how you die your big problem. You now amplify it. You have
absolutely,
amplified your problems. That's
absolutely.
crisis. Then
Mm.
you'll say, yeah, your PR person didn't do the work. No, they
Mm.
worked based on the information you provided to them, but they failed you because they did not tell you that you have problem, and that if the
Absolutely.
world sees this problem, your business will go down. We
Mm.
don't do that. If
Mm.
your business has a problem, we encourage you to resolve that internal issue first.
Fix this
Be
foundation.
ready, right? I mean, you have clients who have never had a profile; they don't have professionally shot headshots. As
Mm.
simple as that. And you
Mm.
say you want to go on channels. What picture are they going to put on the flyer? We should use
Mm.
iPhone to take it. Of course not. Do you see? Something as that. So we plan photo
Mm.
shoots, we do up your company profile, we do up your professional profile for the
Mm.
CEOs. All of those are internal work that is not seen by the public. But that's the beginning of PR work
That's
to make
valid.
sure that the client or the individual is ready for public interaction.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Tolu. We don't have a lot of time. Thanks a lot, Tolu.
Wow, I thought this thing was going to be a long time. What were we going to be talking about? Okay,
But Tolu,
I've repented.
uh, you know, just a quick question on that, right? Let me ask you two questions, right? And then just try and answer them. So number one is around uh so I know that you have this filter through which you see your client base and all of that, or potential clients and all that. But do you see a time in the future where, yes, ethical is not going to go anywhere and all of that, but perhaps how you can begin to serve other kinds of clients, maybe business to consumer kind of client. Maybe you have a division. So I'm not putting ideas in your hand. I'm just asking. But is this a possibility in the future as the practice becomes bigger? Number one. Number two is around the quantification of your impact, right? Because I think if I read, I think I read a couple of your articles here and there, and you're quite articulate in the way you write some of these things and how you are able to quantify some of those, the value that you bring to the table, right? Now we know that the very substance of PR is not like sales, right? I can say I sell this number of cases and this is what comes in and all of that. Or finance, I help you cut this. And no, it's a bit different. But how are you able to, you know, bring some numbers to the potential impact that you deliver to your client, right? Such that they just continue to come back because they know that no, each time we work with Tolucomms, we get this X uplift. I don't know if it is that specific, but I'm sure you get the point.
Yeah, I hear you. So first about expansion in terms of service areas.
Yeah.
Well, so if you asked me this question last year, I'll tell you categorically no. That in fact we're double clicking on even niching down further. You see,
Uh
because as at last year, yeah, as at last year, I started to do a bit more research about public relation practice in the
mm,
UK. And there's some practice areas that I found that is not even
And there's even
It's
more
not. No, no,
Pokemon,
no. There
Ishtamon.
is not even. There is not anything that we are thinking about in Nigeria. And I'm like, you see,
Mm,
I like things that are not common. That is just for a small set of
set
people.
of people.
Once it becomes mass market, I don't like it. I don't like because everybody can do it. But I mean, I found these guys and I was blown away. And I
Mm,
was asking myself, gosh, I mean, if you own, because once you get into a space and you do it well, you own the niche. Anybody coming is after you.
yeah,
You see, or you
absolutely.
get into that space, nobody else understands how it works.
Yeah.
After you, na still you.
Mm.
That's the type of business
That's how you know you.
that you is just your own. I like that type of ownership, right?
Yeah.
That's why I found this. I even reached out to the agency partners, right? Because it was so niche, it was beautiful. But then I had a conversation this year about how I'm very clear as to the kind of person I am and the type of services I want to be able to deliver. And in this conversation I had with another founder, he was then asking, okay, yes, so I mean, you are clear, but what's the size of your business in relation to the quality of client talents that you want to retain? Because if one is not then careful, you have a practice that does not really cater to the aspirations of its talents, right? And I've been very blessed. I mean, I've had a few fails in terms of recruitment, but largely, yes, largely I've been blessed really to have some very fantastic young talents, young people who have worked with me. But what I found, right, actually, is that like average stay time is like 18 months. And at the beginning, it used to be a problem for me because how dare you go after doing so much? Because once you come in, I mean, there's just a lot to teach, right? And if you're really open to learning, there's a lot it's literally like you're going to the university. I had somebody who came in once and she said, "Oh, if she because she came to do an internship after she did a professional course in PR." And she
Mm.
was like, "Oh, if she had known, she would have just come here directly for internship instead of doing that course." No, because I mean it's very in-depth.
Value they got. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's very detailed. But after a while, you see, the career aspirations of the talent that I bring into the company also then needs to be considered, right?
Mm,
If you want to grow, if you want to become, if you want to provide services or you want to work with certain kinds of brands, if Mosron does not provide that platform for
then
you
they'll
to work with those
leave.
brands, then they would leave.
Mm,
So it's still something I'm thinking about. If so, just like you said, maybe now thinking about admitting people into partnerships where they sort of manage certain areas,
yeah.
so that the brand that we've now built sort of provides leverage for these new
Yeah.
divisions to take off.
Absolutely.
It's something I'm thinking about. It's not something that I've necessarily
Fully processed.
um, fully processed. Because the question then also is, it's very possible for you to stay in a niche area and just own it for life, right? So
It's
it's one or two.
it is.
It's
I mean, you are the expert in this, so I won't even try to
yeah,
offer you free
yeah,
consultancy, right? But it is. But the it will not continue to be niche, right? Because remember that
yeah,
you're training people. People are coming through your
yeah.
organization.
And they
Yeah,
are going to do their own.
some of those guys
They
will
are
open
going
shop very
to
close to you,
yes, 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 and they can do what Tolucomms is doing. Well, to an extent,
right? They can
because
do what
again, if it is not, what's that? How do you, if you don't mention the brand name, if
if it
it
is
is
not
not
this, it
a
cannot be
painkiller,
this. Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's not a painkiller, it cannot be that painkiller. You know,
I
So
understand.
like
I
that. But but
I
but I hear you. I hear you. I mean, so again, when I started Mosron, very interesting because at that time also there wasn't any consultancy styled PR firm in Nigeria as such, right? Most of them were agencies. So I didn't even have a template to plan the business around. And what I did was to go look up the structure of KPMG. Do you see? Because they are so in my mind, actually, what I'm building is the KPMG or the PwC for my industry, not an agency at all. Do you see? Now I'm aware, obviously, that KPMG too is not also staying on their lane because they are now providing branding services. And I'm like, guys, leave small room for us. So where are you? Where are you going? Right? But now they have communication managers, and I'm like, accounting, right? So I'm thinking about that. Like I said, as at last year, I was even thinking of niching down further. But with conversations and just engaging with other business leaders who are asking deep questions, I'm now rethinking what that would look like in terms of a structure. And so it's not closed. It's not something that is impossible. It's not impossible, but it's still something that I'm absolutely thinking about. In the short term, we're still as we are.
Mm.
But absolutely, I'm not closing the door to anything.
Penny
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Your second question was about something
around
like
was around what? How do you quantify your impact?
Thank you. You see, when you were asking that question, I smiled.
Yeah, you
One of
smile.
the interesting things about PR is that people are, so what do you bring to the table? That one, most of the time, they ask it in relationships.
Yeah.
If you're an in house communication person, each time you are ready for appraisals, because I faced it. So, what have you done this quarter? Remember how I said, as a communication person, when I was in house on the client side, I was vocal, sensibly, because I can never come to an appraisal and the question you are asking me is, Tolu, so what have you done? The fact that you're asking me that as appraisal, it means I was quiet. My impact was not seen. No, 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 no. If I come to an appraisal, you are not asking me, Tolu, what have you done? Tolu, how can we make sure that you do this more? It's the type of conversations I have at appraisals. Do you see? And so, what I found out very early as a communication person in Nigeria, number one, your clients don't know, and your employers, right? Your clients don't actually know most of the time what to ask of you that is of value to their organization because they're not the experts. Many employers or even clients, they engage public relations or communications people because that's what people do. What do you want the comms person to do for you? If you ask them, it's more about media engagement. Oh, I want to be on channels. I want to be in the newspapers. That's really what many organizations assume PR is. And you see the interesting thing, how we flip it at Musron. Media relations, if you ask me what services we provide at Musron, media relations is like number 4. It's all our top 3 services. There's easy money, beautiful money. But anybody can do it. If you have money, you can be on any channel in Africa. You can be anywhere. So I then ask myself, if any other person can do the work that I'm doing, then that cannot be the work I'm going to dedicate my life to. There has to be something more to it, right? And so remember how this my process of finding my target audience, the guys who could make the decisions where I post content, check who is reading. I created something similar in terms of tracking results. The last place I worked, the last place I worked at, because I mean at that time I was mostly the one using LinkedIn. And it wasn't because they required it, it's because I was using it for myself. And I was the head of communications. And it was a real estate company. So we had tried doing ads because that's marketing. We had run ads and it wasn't really converting. I think it was 2017. I posted an article that I wrote myself about real estate. And I talked about how I'd never experienced a landlord coming to knock on our doors to say rent is due because that wasn't something I had I ever thought about as a child. It was something that my parents sorted out. Juicy. And I posted that article. Bottom line, it was a call to action. Come and buy our own properties. That's what the gist of that was. I was the head of communication. By the time I posted that article, that post on LinkedIn, it was 2017. I think the company got some 200 plus leads from my posts. They didn't ask me to do it. Again, remember that normally I post on LinkedIn anyway. Do you see? 200 leads that would have cost the company money in adverts because we're also running adverts. But these were people who could directly relate to the story I was telling, right? And it's how I found out that storytelling is so important and your ability to connect your own experiences with the aspirations or the thoughts or the challenges of your readers, who are your target audience, can unlock crazy value that marketing cannot unlock. Do you understand? Why would anybody then ask me, Tolu, what have you done this quarter? When I'm coming back to you with 200 leads that your salesperson with all the advert money did not deliver, you can't ask me, right? So what I also started to do when we do content posting or we publish a newspaper article for an organization, we don't look at the newspaper publication in isolation. How many people then went to search for the CEO on LinkedIn, right? Because we would have been tracking. You see, one of the challenges that generally either PR people or general business people face is that there's not a lot of attention on tracking pre-activities. You only track when an activity is done. But what are you measuring it against? Nothing. You don't know what it was before, so you can't really see how effective this one is, right? So for something as little, for clients who allow us to do that level of um, tracking and surveying, what was how many people were connected to your CEO, for example, a week before we posted? What was their engagement, their content engagement like?
And
How
then you
many
see the
people searched
trend.
them that week? And then we publish a newspaper publication,
Mm,
and then we check it 1 week after. How did that change? You cannot
mm.
tell me that, oh, people just woke up one day and then started commenting on your CEO's post, or people, he moved from 50 searches this week to 350 searches this next
just
week after we
just
posted,
like that.
and it doesn't have anything to do with the newspaper publication. Cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many things now. So for business to business organizations, one of the questions, and I still had that conversation the other day, I was brought into a meeting. We had this speech presentation to the client, and of course,
Mm.
finance people, they are the bane of our existence. So, what are we going to get? What are we going to get from this? Because you are telling us to spend all this money, do what's it called, newspaper adverts, do this
What's the
and do this, and this
ROI?
is what's the ROI? And then I say, well, I mean, that's a valid question, sir. That's a valid question. If I tell you to spend 90 million, it's fair for you to ask me, so what am I getting? But I can't answer that question and tell you are going to get 180 million. You know why? Because while these activities will not directly bring in money, I can show you categorically how it will lead to money. Here's how. You're a B2B organization. Your guys have gone out to sell. Before you started doing anything around PR and communications, it would sometimes take your salespeople 9 months to 12 months to close a sale. And then I started, yeah. And then we start PR activities. And suddenly your sales guys are closing in 3 months. They are closing sales in 6 months. And you're asking me, so what's the impact of PR? Oga, let's talk the truth to ourselves. You know how? For example, if a salesperson was going to take 12 months to close a sale, likely because that prospective client has never heard the business before, doesn't know the founder, doesn't know the antecedents of this business, nothing. The salesperson is going to spend more time, more energy, first bridging that knowledge gap. I need to tell these guys about my business. I need to show workings of my company to these people before I can even start selling. What PR does is to answer those questions for you. You have heard us on radio. You're always seeing my CEO's content on LinkedIn, right? If you go outside, we're on the billboard. There is knowledge, there is a foundation of knowledge that we have created that your salespeople are going to build on. It's not blank. They are not coming on a blank canvas. What PR does is to provide that foundation of knowledge or to further provide a knowledge base or reference materials that your prospective clients can reference. We are not going to create it each time for this prospective client. No, we have a knowledge bank, right? Either it's in form of a CEO interview or a CEO is speaking in an industry recognized platform. Or you see, because something as simple as taking pictures with certain kinds of people positions you differently in the minds of people. We too, we know people. That's what it means. Let people see you with people that matter. It's a PR strategy, not just because people feel like doing it. It's just that these days people overdo it, or they take pictures with people that don't really matter, but that they don't matter. Because imagine taking a picture with a fraudulent person just because he has money. We already know that you two are fraudulent. You see, all the proverbs that we have in Africa, they are aligned. Birds of the same feather flock together. And that's why in PR, either strategy development or in consulting, you think about the kinds of people that your CEO or the business associates with. Because whatever reputation that other one has, you have also carried it. So if they don't have a good reputation, you have carried their cross. If they have a great one, you are going to borrow from that reputation bank that they have and leverage it for yourself. And many people have done it. Fraudulent people um, associated with good people,
Mm.
right? And suddenly they've been washed. You know how
In a sense,
people
yeah.
launder money and they wash the money.
Mm.
PR can wash people's images if you do it
Mm.
well. And
Mm.
that's where ethics come in, where we don't do that.
Do that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is very clear. So you're very, I mean, to just kind of wrap it up, that particular point. So you are very
Mhm.
intentional in
Very.
tracking the non necessarily not non financial metrics, right?
Yes.
That has the
Yes.
potential to, you know, lead to conversion and lead to business and
Yeah.
all of that. Because that, I mean, that is what you're paid to do
Yeah.
anyway. So you're not like going to be
Absolutely.
the sales guy who is going on the field
Absolutely.
to go and look for the money.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
we're not
And
doing very
sorry, let me just add, it's so interesting. So
yeah.
for some 3 years now, I'm working on it. I don't know what the name is called. So it's interesting. I wrote the NIPR, the PR exams, but sometimes the terminologies in the industries is not something that I'm necessarily familiar with. Do you understand? So sometimes when I do something and then maybe it's years later, I hear that there's a name for it. We have been doing it. I didn't know you had a proper name, right? So for some 3 years, 2, 3 years now, I've been thinking about codifying this process that I have, and I'm working on it now. And I mean, so that it becomes an industry standard. There's a part of PR that is measurement and evaluation, and there are certain theories, right, that back it up, and yes, that you use to measure it. I'm creating my own model, as it were, for measurement, and it's so interesting, and it involves several teams, right, within an organization, because the essence of PR is not, or comms is not, a service, or is not a profession that on its own can stand. PR itself is a combination of the activities of several other units for you to really see the value of PR. And right now, there is really no model, as it were, that recognizes the input of other units. And that's why when I engage my team, and if you are ever going to leave and you're going to the client side, I tell people that you can't say that you're a PR person and you're isolated. Oh, you don't talk to marketing, you don't talk to sales. Your failure is coming, they're going to fire you, right? Because your work will not have any results if you're not engaging marketing, if you're not engaging sales. You must be able to connect the work that you're doing with the results they are getting. Otherwise, sales will wake up one day and say, oh, I sold 1 trillion products, not knowing that PR contributed like 50% to it. But because you are not talking to sales, sales will take all the glory, and you cannot question sales because they brought in the actual money. But where comes is not engaging sales, you are in the blind. Or you will then be hearing them saying, I posted on Facebook. In 2025, you better be doing more than posting on Facebook.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's that's a lot. I hope the PR guys that will listen to these will take a big leap from
They'll
that,
get it.
right? And of course,
They'll get
read up on you. By the way, before we move on, just a few more questions, and we'll begin to bring this to a close.
Sure.
Now, the question I have is a bit like again two-sided, right? And one is like business facing, the other one is like a bit like family and and all of that. Now it's around people, okay? And you said something around, fortunately for you, you've not had a lot of like failures around hiring. And if it is possible, I would just like you to talk a little bit, speak a little bit to that, right? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with at times finding the right people. At times you find the right people, how do you retain them? Especially with you that does like almost 100%, virtual kind of work environment versus people that even have like a physical office, right? So if you can speak a little bit to that, how do you what are your practices and processes are in terms of how you get people in, and then what processes and systems do you have around ensuring that they are learning and they are able to add value. Now that is the business side that's the business focus of business facing side of the question. The other side of the question is with all that you are involved with everything that you're involved with, Tolucomms, Mostron, and everything. How do you balance this with family, hobby, the kids, and all of that, and still manage to retain your sanity?
Not to run mad. Yeah. Well, so let's start with the hiring. So while I've not necessarily had a lot of challenges in terms of hiring, first of all, it's because my business does not require a lot of people.
Hmm.
Do you understand?
Hmm.
So it's not that I've had to hire a lot of people and most of them have been good. No, it's because the team size is really bespoke. Right? It's really bespoke. That's number one. But I have had issues now. But first of all, this my last job that I had before I started Mozron full time. It was the first time I had a direct report, and I was worried. See how I'm very focused on ensuring that there's value and that there's a process for me to transfer that value. For the longest time, I believed that I wasn't a good teacher. I don't think I'll be able to manage people well. I didn't know how to delegate. I just didn't believe that it was something I could do. And so when I was going to get this my first report on that job, I was really concerned. Was I going to be a good boss? How do I interact with this person? Again, so I'm somewhat bigger now. I was quite slim but some years back, and compare that with being a woman, even though honestly I've never really had any issue with, oh, she's a female or whatever. That's never been my experience, whether in school or on the job. It's never been. It's just let's do the work and everybody moves on. But it was really more about me questioning my personal capacity to lead. It wasn't something that I was really convinced about. But then I had this my report, right? And I guess we did well because when we was eventually going to move on from the when I was going to move on from the organization, he then wrote me a recommendation on LinkedIn. And he said that he thought he was coming to work. He didn't know he was coming to school. I don't understand. Yeah, so apparently it was quite now
Yeah.
this was feedback from somebody where we were both employees, right?
Mm.
It was just a lot of, I mean, let's do the thing the way it should be done. And
Mm.
again, because there's a way I do PR that's not necessarily very common,
Mm.
right? If you're interacting with that process, I mean, except there's a problem, it's a
Mm.
lot of learning, right? So from that experience, when I then started Mozron, it was also the same challenge. I don't think it was first a personal fear of, I don't think I'll be able to cope with hiring people. How do I manage? What do I tell them? I didn't understand
Mm.
what I was going to be saying.
Mm.
It was a lot of a problem. And I mean, until I was literally overwhelmed with work,
Mm.
I didn't hire my first staff. And
Mm.
even that first staff. So at this time, I was also running Nigerian Women in PR. It
Mm.
was something that I was doing on the side. It was essentially created Twitter page, Instagram page, and just post when I remember and I
Mm.
have the capacity. Now, just before then, again, I've always been active on LinkedIn. I
Mm.
was always writing. And so before I even started my business full time, I would have young people say, oh, I would like you to mentor me. I don't understand what that means because, again, I've always written stuff,
Yeah.
right? But I want Tolu, I would like to support you in what you're doing. Is there a way I can learn from you? In my mind, there wasn't anything I was doing that you could learn from or how you could support me in what I don't know. But there was this very insistent lady who said, oh, she wanted to do stuff for me because she was on my case. Oh, yeah, I'm doing Nigerian Women in PR. Please go and check the Instagram, the Twitter page. Let me
Mm.
know what your assessment is and how we can improve it. She did, sent me a DM on Twitter, came back. Oh, yeah, volunteer, yeah, be managing the page, and I gave her access to it. And that was it. She was still in school at the time. And then she went for service and she was still volunteering with me. When she finished service, she didn't get a job immediately. And I felt
Mm.
bad. This girl has been volunteering with me for some 12 months.
Mm.
How can I then, in good conscience, know that she's not working and then
Mm.
say, let's keep praying to God? Oh, yeah, come.
Mm.
As a stopgap until
Mm.
you get a job, you can come and work at Musron.
Mm.
And you see, each time, I thank God that she was my first staff because it felt like, I mean, so at that time, one of the processes I'd created was you have to learn how to self-manage. I wasn't willing to be holding anybody's hand. It was remote. I wasn't willing to spend my time to be saying, so are you at work? Are you working? That was something I was very clear from the beginning. I wasn't willing to do. It was about we agree on the deliverables. If you finish your deliverables at 10 a.m. and there's no work to do, no problem. Let's agree on the work to do and let's do it and we're okay. So each time I brought in new team members at that time, I gave them a task. Create your self development task. What are the things you want to learn over the next 3 months? Determine it by yourself without input from me. And they would make that presentation to me. This is my first staff who had been volunteering with me for 12 months. Did her presentation and said that she wanted to become Tolucomms in 3 months. In 3 months. You know the sweat and tears I went through to become whatever it is you are saying that you want to become. But that challenge, it was funny because first it then made me see that, oh, there's something I know or that I'm doing that people that she liked and wanted to become. Because in my mind, what am I that you want to become? We are posting, you are posting. All of us are on LinkedIn, we're on LinkedIn. So what do you want to learn again? But that was my first experience. And gosh, she was so dedicated. She was the one, I mean, together we created like the first staff handbook for Mosron and all of that. It was just somebody that was really interested in working. And then from there, my second team member, gosh, was also brilliant. And this lady was in Russia. She's one of the staff that I'd never met. Now, one hack I found as a founder in getting good stuff is that I had a personal brand first. People wanted to do things with me. Anything that was then involved in was just like an expression. They wanted to either interact with me, they wanted to work with me, they were inspired by my own story. And I've been building this not because I wanted people to be inspired or whatever. I was just sharing because I have to write and get money because of hunger that was knocking. And but people were getting inspired on the side, right? So ordinarily, I would get young people who would send me DMs to say, "Oh, Tolu, please, I want to work with you." And because in my mind, there's no work for you to come and do here anyway. There was a so that's how the first set of people that I engaged were literally people who pitched to me that they wanted to work with me. This Russian lady, she had done a research. She just finished university in Russia and she had done it. She wanted to do PR in Africa. And so she wanted insight about that. She had researched about three, four founders in Nigeria. And she reached out to me because I'd done an interview on Arise TV. It was about the time of NSAS, and I was speaking about that on TV. And she found it, she sent me a pitch about why she wanted to work with me. I was amazed. What am I doing that? And this lady, she worked with me for some 3+ years. She's still freelancing for me till now, right? So the people I got and the first great experiences I had as an employer were people who just wanted to interact with me and they felt it was a privilege for them to work with me,
Walk with you.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, so that's how I managed. But then, of course, as the business grew, I started to get people. I started to create processes because people can run you mad, right? People don't know anything. Many people have zero upstairs. First of all, I found the people who are going to give you the most problem will ask you for the most money because they
Mm.
don't know anything, but they believe they know it. They are very insistent on, I know my rights,
Mm.
especially for a young person. You don't have like 10 years experience, 8 years experience. You're coming to an interview with that body language of
Braggadocio.
I know my
Yeah.
yeah. And thankfully, because I'm hiring in an industry that I'm aware of, each time I tell my team members, there is nothing you want to do that I won't know. There is nowhere you want to hide that because it's the same industry. It's the same comms. When you started, I also know how I started. I know the things I was doing. So you can't hide. There's no grammar you want to use to cover it that cannot be uncovered. In terms of internal processes, though, what do we do? How do we ensure that there's learning? So very quickly, we had created a staff handbook for people to join because I found out that, I mean, I can't be telling people every time, just read the staff handbook. And each time a new team member joins, many times you ask team members, so what are we not doing right? I'm not always very interested in the things that we're doing right. Most of the time I can see it. I'm more interested in getting information about my blind spots. What are the things that frustrate you as a staff on this job? From your interaction with clients, what do you think are the things we are not doing well that would improve our results to clients or that will make clients more comfortable with us? We also have our Friday learnings, the staff presentation every Friday. Everybody must read at least 5 articles, industry related and non-related, and make a presentation, right? And with that, I teach presentation skills, because when you are making the presentation, when you finish, everybody on the call will critique your presentation. So
Every
you learn
Friday.
public speaking every Friday, 5 articles. And then other days we do simulations of presenting to a client, because some of the times I've had my team members join me on a client call and, oh yeah, say something, and they are stammering. Communication person, whether you are 3 months post graduation or 5 years post graduation, everybody do simulation. Everybody, I mean, just practice,
Get
regardless
comfortable.
of. Yes,
Mm,
get comfortable, because I can call on you anytime. And
mm,
these days, I also reduce the amount of public engagement that I do and try to bring my team members up. I can't send you to go and represent now you fall my hand. First of
mm,
all, on the WhatsApp group. So most of our engagement is on all of our engagement is on WhatsApp. And I
mm.
tell my, if you mess me up, I will find you to your house and mess you up.
That's a
Yeah. And she
threat.
told, yeah. I tell, no. So again, when I'm up front, I'm up front. If you go and spoil my eyes there, we will find ourselves and we will mess ourselves up. And again, because there's now a proper training system where,
Mm,
I mean, it will be really village people that will be after you if you go
yeah.
outside and mess up. Because with the training system internally, you have your colleagues giving you.
Feedback.
It's not,
Mm.
oh, you did well. If everybody is telling you you did well, I remind them, excuse me, you are not
We're
her
not here
boyfriend.
for. Mm,
We are not here to rub your head. Please give her proper feedback so that she can improve. And what we
mm.
then remind ourselves, whatever feedback you get today in terms of areas of improvement, you can't come back next week and repeat the
I
same
was
thing. It
taking
means
it.
you're not learning,
Yeah.
and you cannot waste our time, right?
Mm,
So that's how that's managed. Finally, in terms of family, I work from home. The cheat code for me, because I can be lazy, and my spouse will tell you that. The cheat code for me, honestly, is having a domestic assistant. Now, thankfully, when I started the business, my kids were just growing. So it was perfect. It was like a perfect timing. The kids required me. It was great for me to be available at home, and I was raising the kids, and I was also working from home. So it was great. But even in that greatness, because when I started building the business, there wasn't I close at 5 p.m., right? I had a domestic assistant quickly. It wasn't living. I also live in a low income, as it were, environment very deliberately. My husband is a farmer. So we sort of stay in a place that is um not very expensive in terms of living costs, right? So my domestic assistant stays around. She walks from my house to my house, and then she closes. But as the kids grew up, we also reduced our time. So now she resumes at 12 o'clock or 2 p.m. and closes at 6 o'clock. When she's around, I tell her, please assume that you can't see me. I'm invisible. I'm not in this house, so it's just that you can see my body. If I'm seated at this laptop, I mean, it must be an act of God that would get me to stand up. Oh, hello, ma. The children are not eating. If I'm in Ikoyi, will you call me to tell me the children are not eating? You better sort it out. Do you see? So there's complete separation, right? And my office space is just like an extension of my living room. The kids can literally see me. But when mommy is at her laptop, they know that mommy is working. So there's separation of mommy time and children time. And to be fair, when I started Most Run, I do know, because it did impact our relationship a bit. I remember my husband complaining. That's when I found out that, oh, women multitask. For me, is a lie. You can't be talking to me and I'm working. My ears are deaf, unfortunately. I can't hear it, right? If I'm on my system and somebody else is talking to me, I literally cannot hear anybody else. Even if I'm not talking to, I'm completely in that zone. And it was a lot of challenge for us then, because he would want to gist with me. There was too much riding on it for me to just do it anyhow, because no. So that caused actually a lot of friction for us, because then I wasn't as attentive at the house with my spouse, because obviously domestic assistants cannot do you anything with your
Certain
spouse.
things.
They
Yeah.
can help you with the, they can help you with the children. They can't help you with your spouse, right? I mean, so there would be that friction, honestly. And one of the
Mm.
things I do recommend is for spouses to be more understanding, especially when businesses are just coming up.
Let me ask you one final question, right? Maybe it's two sided, but final one. You know the way preachers used to say, first closing, second closing. This is final two questions, right? Now, if I'm trying to crystallize all of your story, right? And I normally ask this question in a different way, but I, I can't help but wonder, right? Look at it, that. Okay, I can't help but wonder. Look at the way you were brought up, right? The fact that your dad had a lot of books, right? And you loved reading, and somehow you found yourself studying English. I don't know what informed that choice, right? Because people would think it's because you love something that you are reading English or some. Do you get what I mean? But you found yourself reading English, but even if you didn't read English, right, you probably would have ended up doing what you're doing because it's just you, right? And then you continue to navigate your way along that path to where you are today, right? And for me, it looks like you're made for this, right? And the first the first question around is, if if you want to do this again, right? Are there things that you will do differently, right? That is, if you, yes, probably you still arrive at the same door, but are there things you would do differently that will help you go faster, right? On one hand, and then on the other hand is, will it even do it?
Oh,
You understand? Will you even do it? And if you would do it, will you do it differently? And then, is there any final advice, sorry, or word for young startups out there, you know, as a veteran that you are now, if you have been doing something for 20 years, you're a veteran of some sort, right? Are there any like final thoughts and words that you would like to share for
right.
people who, so it looks like three in one, but
Yeah,
I'm sure you understand. Will you
yeah.
do it again if you have to do it again? And if you're gonna do that, what will you do differently?
Mm.
And then any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
All right. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Absolutely. So secondary school, when you're leaving secondary school, they ask, what do you want to be in the future? And I remember writing in that yearbook that I wanted to be a lawyer and a journalist. Right. I actually wanted to study law. Most of us who study English, we actually wanted to study law, but they gave us English. Do you see? Um, um, but I find, you see, God is a master planner. I find that public relations actually still allows me to express that desire for legal studies and journalism in peer, right? Because as a public relations professional, you need to speak on behalf of your clients, you need to understand some legal terminologies and just some things, right? From legal standpoint of view, and then of course journalism, because now there's media and you need, so it's just a combination of the two. I find that PR provides that platform that answers the desire of my heart to be both a lawyer and a journalist. So it was just perfect for me. And like I said, if I started a business in 2006, that's when I found PR. I still don't remember till today when I first came across that profession. But I started writing the exams while I was in school, and I was super clear, right? So again, remember that I'm generally a planner. I had the life plan as at 2005, right, of what I was going to be doing at 40. So there was all of that clarity, right? So for me, would I do it? Absolutely, I'll do it again. I'll do it again. However, I would spend my money more intentionally, right? Because as the money started to come in, and this is more really for female founders. Just see. I'm not sure how to talk about that here, but I'll spend the funds of the business a bit more intentionally, and not be necessarily constrained by societal expectation in terms of spousal dependence, right? We have a lot of critical money conversations as I started to do well in the business, right? But eventually we got to that point. What I'm saying is that I would have had that conversation a bit more earlier. I use the money a bit more wisely. From the business perspective, I would have hired a freelance graphic designer earlier, right? One of the critical turning points for my business was when I got this prospective client that I was really looking up to, and I was so certain that if only I got an opportunity to work with her, my life would change forever. And then she reached out to me and then she said, send me a proposal. I'm working on this thing. I sent her the proposal. Remember how I said I was a one woman mopole at the time? And so I go on Canva, do the design, and send to her. And she says, oh, Tolu, I don't think you can manage this project. That she doesn't get the feeling that I can manage a project of this magnitude. Gosh, you see, again, I've written about this and it's on my LinkedIn. That's why when people ask me for mentorship, what else am I supposed to say? Everything is there. And I wrote, and that experience literally shook the foundation of my confidence in my capacity as a
Because you could
professional.
afford, sorry to cut in, you could afford to hire, somebody to
It
do
wasn't
it for you
necessarily that I
then.
could afford it because eventually I did hire the person. It wasn't because the money was available. It was just I didn't see it as an expense because I thought I could do it. And I can do it, but
Mm,
just not at the level of a professional. I
of
could
a
do something
professional.
passable, right? Because I
Mm,
mean, once I got that feedback, what I started to do was I reached out to people. I engaged. I paid two marketing and PR professionals to join me as freelancers, as strategists, so that when I got PR briefs, I would send them these briefs on WhatsApp and we would do the strategy together. And you know what I found? That the strategies I was coming up with by myself was much better than the strategies these other guys were coming up with, right? But what I eventually told myself, because I paid them, and at that time, it wasn't that I had the money, but I mean, this was a client that I was really looking forward to working with, and then comes back and tells me, Tolu, I don't think you can do it. I started to ask myself, Tolu, are you sure it's not just mouth you two you have? Maybe you can't really do this thing, right? So I now reached out to people who were already working with agencies who had years of experience, but they are just worked with more brands, just so that I could show up my experience, my confidence, because I thought maybe I really didn't know it. But by the time I was engaging them, the things I was coming up with on my own was much better. What I termed that expense as was that I paid to restore my confidence, right? And so it was the same time also because this lady, one of the feedback she gave was that my presentation, my proposal was just horrible. He didn't really communicate that I could do what I was saying. And because I had shared that proposal also with a couple of people, the consensus was the strategy was great, but the presentation was horrible. Do you understand? And so I didn't have the money, but it was the same way I didn't have the money to pay these two other guys 250K each at that time, right? Just to because I was really shaking. Is it that I don't know this thing? This was somebody I really wanted to work with. She came to me and then it looked like I flopped it. Eventually, I engaged this freelancer guy, the same content for that same proposal. He designed it. I sent it to her, not because I wanted to get the job back, because I thought I'd lost the opportunity. I just wanted her to see that, oh, I could really do it. And I presented a better proposal. And she was like, oh, Tolu, let's have a meeting. Ah, so if I had known, I would have engaged the freelancer. And so
I would have saved you a lot
one
of.
of the things I learned is that you can do it. If you cannot do it as well, pay somebody who can so that you can focus on your expertise,
On the
right?
key things that
Yes, focus on the key things and let the people who are experts do the work.
do their
Right.
thing.
But find people at your level. You don't need to go and find this guy that I employed at that time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because sometimes we want to go and borrow money to
Yeah.
the guy was paying him maybe 30K per month or there per
Mm,
brief or something like that.
mm,
It wasn't crazy money that would literally kill me. It was from the business, but
mm,
now I didn't have as much savings. But oh, the confidence I got back after that second feedback was transformational, right? And that's something. What will I tell founders? What I just said now. Focus on your own area. I mean, yes, because you may not have a lot of money when you start, it may be difficult for you to say, oh, how do I employ people? They are freelancers. Join communities. Communities was one of my cheat codes to develop, grow this business. I joined a number of communities. I was active in those communities. Again, I've written about this. If I'm on any WhatsApp group, well, whatever it is they're talking about, my only conversation there is about communications. In fact, it was on one of those WhatsApp groups that somebody named me Tolucomms. Yeah.
Ah.
Unfortunately, I can't find that thing again. I would have done a screenshot and laminated it, and that became my name. Because whatever, if you are talking politics, I'm on the group, I will talk about it from a communication standpoint. There is no way I'll be on the group and you will not know that it's comms I'm doing. That was my marketing strategy. And it continues to be. So if I'm on a group and if you are not active and you're a founder, you don't need money. Like I said, hunger was pursuing me, like it was calling my son name. Some people they have money, they have backup. I didn't have any backing, so it was either work or starve. Right? So yeah, be active in the communities that you're on. If you're a service entrepreneur, I mean, I watched one of the interviews that you did with Toyin, and there was
Mm,
conversation about funding for startup. If you're a service
yeah.
business, I have done it several times, even as a
Mm,
product business founder. You don't need
mm,
1 naira to start.
absolutely.
You don't need it.
Absolutely. Mm,
On another side, that is not Tolucomms, I have another product business that's 100% internet based. And I mean, if you have a phone and you have
mm,
internet and you
mm,
have the idea, you don't need any other money. The business, if you
mm,
do it well, will provide the money that you need to scale it up. If you want to scale it up, because that's the other thing.
mm,
There's a lot of pressure for founders to scale. Your definition of
mm,
success must be your own, not what
mm.
the world
What
determines success to
defines
be,
for you?
defines it to
Mm,
be. You should be comfortable. Whatever you say is your success. If success for you means you're serving clients only in Lagos, you should be confident anywhere to say it. When I started my business, one of the challenges I had was that do I want a business that will become so big that will start giving me sleepless nights? I didn't want it. I didn't want business success where I would have to sacrifice my family, right? Because you know how sometimes it's like you design something and it starts growing bigger. You are not the one driving it again, it's the one driving you. I didn't want a business that will start driving me to where I don't know, like we say in Nigeria. I didn't want it to take me to where I didn't know. I wanted a clear, this is what I want my future to be like. And the business supports me to get to that future, not drives me. And then I get to the future and I'm like, but this is not what I like. No, 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 no. Family is critical to me. And I didn't want a business that would steal that away from me. And as a founder, it's easy for you to lose sight of the things, the values that are important to you. And that's one of the things I found as a business owner. Um, if you don't have very clear values when you start up as a founder, if you are only interested in the money, money will come at the expense of your values if you are not clear and determined to stay by it, right? I could absolutely have made more money if I was willing to cut corners or neglect my principles and my values. Like I tell my team members, and now they say it, any money I will get that will not allow me to sleep, please, the money can go. I did not borrow money from bank. I should not be having sleepless nights. That may not be the reality for a product founder that needs to start to set up a warehouse and all of that. No. Our realities are different. As a service entrepreneur, your capacity is really dependent on your competence. You should not have to sacrifice your ethics and your values and your principles in pursuit of money. The money is always available if you want it, but don't sacrifice your life for it. And health is wealth, oh, as I round up. Your health is so
Health
important.
is
I mean, my gosh, don't fall sick. Hypertension is real for founders. At 30 years old, you can have hypertension if you don't manage it. I tell you that from
Mm.
experience.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is the first time we're going over 2 hours on any interview since we started. And it's not just because you said, it's because you shared a lot and you're sharing from your soul, right? And because you've gone through a lot and you just, it's good for people to be able to, learn from your story, right? And the peculiarities of your journey, right? Which is quite unusual, like I said to you earlier. So thank you so much. Now I understand why your report would say that I thought I was getting the job. I didn't know it was a school. because I'm sure
Yeah,
the guy must have learned a
a
lot,
lot. Well,
right? Just by
try.
daily interacting with you. So thanks a lot for, for coming on the podcast.
Thank
We
you
are
for
super,
having me.
super thankful. It's our
Thank you for
pleasure.
having me,
Thank you.
Kale.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the opportunity to share as well. I wish everyone success as you go on in your own journey.
Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you on the next episode.